Revenge films.
Perhaps my mother-in-law was in love with her own son, but ever since we got engaged, it seemed like she didn't like me. And even when I formally greeted her, she ignored me the entire time. My fiancé stood up for me.
What is with that attitude? Kelly said yes to becoming my wife. Don't be so rude to her.
And took my side the whole time. However, her attitude didn't change even when we got married.
I'm really sorry, Kelly. I know it's unpleasant, so you only have to interact with her at the bare minimum.
He made me a priority, so I would only have to see her for a couple of hours every year over the holidays. But even in those limiting interactions, we had a problem. My mother-in-law would get the entire family and relatives involved. We're playing Russian roulette with the dishes tonight. One plate has rotten food on it. I wonder who's going to get it. And she would play these cruel games, and with almost 100% certainty, it would always land on me. One year, I had the dumplings that she had prepared, but inside, there wasn't any actual food. Instead, they were filled with extremely spicy mustard. I couldn't even make words because my mouth was on fire and I could barely breathe. But she and my relatives simply laughed at me. Oh dear, looks like today's big winner was Kelly. Of course, recognizing that it was me almost every single time, my husband tried to step in.
This is so unfair. It's almost always landing on Kelly.
Once he would say something, every so often the rotten dish would land on somebody else. But in those instances...
Oh, come on. My mochi has chocolate inside. I guess this time I was the loser.
And it was always something actually edible. But every time it would land on me, and the only times that it would land on me, it would be something awful, like a soup with an entire bag of salt in it. To make matters worse, when I said I wouldn't eat it...
Oh, come on. You're not going to eat your mother-in-law's cooking? What kind of wife are you?
The relatives would join forces to harass me about it. Of course, my husband would get furious.
Why are the pranks so different? An entire filling of spicy mustard and chocolate aren't the same!
He would try to fight for me, but...
Aw, how cute of you to get mad for Kelly. It's only just a game. Everybody has drawn the unlucky dish fairly. Why would you have to ruin the mood like that?
And they would belittle my husband too. As much as I hated this treatment, I hated even more that they would speak to my husband, so... Even though I only had to see them a handful times per year, I truly dreaded going to any family gatherings. But if we didn't go... You rarely come to greet us as is. And if you're not even going to spend the holiday season with us, what kind of ill-mannered wife are you? I wonder how your parents raised you. I can only imagine they didn't raise you with the morals or values, much any less manners. She would even try to drag my parents into it, so I couldn't just not go. My husband was thoughtful, and he would go and buy a separate meal for me knowing what was going to happen, but then... What do you mean you're not going to have the food that I worked so hard to prepare? You're an awful daughter-in-law. I need to make sure that the neighbors hear about this. And I was forced to eat what was on the table. I don't know what exactly mother-in-law was saying anytime we would go back to my husband's hometown.
Look, it must be the wife she was talking about. Oh, yes, the brat that won't even eat her own mother-in-law's homemade cooking. Rudely saying that it tastes bad, and instead making her husband go buy her other food. That one. Yes, exactly. A lot of wives these days seem to have no manners. I wonder if the son realizes what a poor choice he's made.
They would speak loudly enough just for us to hear, even trashing my husband. That's why every holiday season I would get depressed. However, in my 5th year of being married to my husband, the holiday season rolled around, and I started to feel the depression coming on. I had prepared everything to head to my husband's family's home when he said, Huh? Well, now that you mention it, I was feeling a little bit hot. Since my husband pointed it out, we took my temperature and it was well over 100 degrees.
Hey, Kelly. Your face is a little red. Are you okay?
But...
Your fever is way too high. There's no way we could go home like this. I've always been against making you go back there every year. But my mom is always so hard about it, even bad-mouthing your parents. And no matter how many times I tell her, she doesn't stop. But this time, I'm going to go by myself. Depending on the situation, I'm thinking about cutting all ties with them.
Cutting ties with your family? That wasn't something to be taken lightly. Of course, just thinking about my mother-in-law and my relatives made my blood boil, but I also didn't feel good about my husband cutting all ties with his entire family just for me.
Anyway, you stay home and rest. If you start to feel really unwell, you should call your mom and have her come to take care of you.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on my temperature. I'm really sorry, honey.
Why are you apologizing? Anything, I should be the one that's sorry.
My husband tucked me into bed and went back to his mother's home alone. To be honest, having a fever like this was the luckiest thing for me, because it was a genuine and honest reason why I didn't have to see my mother-in-law. It wasn't a lie or anything, and I actually had a high fever, so I couldn't go back for the holidays. At the very least, I figured she wouldn't bring my parents into this one. As I laid in bed alone at home, I never could have imagined that this trip home by my husband would result in my mother-in-law and the relatives getting a taste of true karma. Shortly after my husband left, I called my mother and her to come over. As soon as she arrived, "Oh dear, it's so rare for you to even catch a cold. We should probably go to the doctor. I'll take you there. Also, I'll make you some porridge or noodles for dinner. Whenever you feel like you have an appetite, it'll be ready for you." "Thank you, Mom." While I was at the hospital with my mom and getting checked out, my husband was in the car and almost arriving at his family's home. When he got there, he ran into the landlord, who also lives nearby.
Oh, you must be Scott's son. Are you back home for the holidays? Yes, thank you for always taking care of my father.
The landlord was a busy owner and was often out of town for work, but he was also the CEO of the company that my father-in-law was working at.
Oh, is your wife not joining you this year? I thought you always come back together this time of year. Yes, we were preparing to come back together again this year, but she was looking a little pale. And when we took her temperature, it was well over 100 degrees. So my mother-in-law is looking after her right now. I see. Well, your wife is such a lovely lady. You really found yourself a good one. Thank you very much. Oh, if you'd like, would you like to come inside for a little bit? Well, why not? It would be rude of me not to.
And the two of them walked into the family home together. When they got inside, nobody was around except for his father. As the three of them were catching up and having a nice chat, my husband's little brother arrived.
Hey, Mom says dinner is ready and to come to the dining room.
My husband has called the house earlier to let them know ahead of time that I had a fever and wouldn't be joining them tonight. However, there are 3 plates of food on the table.
Well, I'm sure this is for someone, but we can always order delivery for that person later.
And he invited the landlord to sit and eat with us. On top of the tables, there are 3 trays of high-end sushi, as well as some appetizers what the mother-in-law had made that were covered up in plastic wrap. At first, the landlord hesitated.
Are you sure you don't mind? This is really nice sushi. There must be somebody who was really looking forward to this.
But my father-in-law insisted.
We can just order more later, so please, we would love for you to join us. Let's sit down and eat.
My husband and his father sat in their usual designated seats, and the landlord took one of the remaining seats. When the 3 of them put the first piece of sushi in their mouth, the landlord immediately threw up on the spot.
What on earth is this? It's rotten!
He got up and yelled. My husband and his father were shocked, and when they went to smell the appetizers that were on the table, they were indeed expired and rotten. My husband had the realization, and when he went to look at all of the sushi on the landlord's plate, it was covered in excessive amounts of wasabi and spicy mustard. No matter which side you started eating from, you were bound to get hit. The landlord went to the sink to wash his mouth, and when he came back...
What the hell is going on here? Are your plates rotten too?
The 3 of them confirmed, and of course, the only rotten plate was the one sitting in front of the landlord. That was when my mother-in-law and the group of relatives, including my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, returned. The moment she saw the landlord there, "Why did you eat this? That was supposed to be for that brat!" The incriminating words slipped out of her mouth.
I'm sorry. I just remembered that he called earlier to tell us that his wife had a fever and that she wouldn't be coming. But I forgot to tell you all.
My husband's brother hid his face.
Are you kidding me? You were gonna make Kelly eat something that's this rotten?
The landlord had finally rinsed his mouth clean.
Don't tell me that you guys were acting this horribly to your own son's wife! This is unbelievable!
No! That's just a misunderstanding! This is just a game!
You think it's a game to make somebody eat something this rotten? Don't you know that it could really injure their stomach and send them to the hospital? In the worst case, it could become serious and make them suffer for days! And you're calling that a game?
He was livid as he stormed out of the house. My father-in-law was often away on transfer assignments, and even on holidays, he wouldn't always be there for family gatherings, so this was all new to him, and he was shocked.
What the hell is going on here? This isn't just a one-time occurrence. You were doing something like this every single time? Absolute scum of the earth! You better apologize to Kelly!
He was furious as well. Meanwhile, I had no idea any of this was going on. While my mom was taking care of me at home, I was fast asleep after being relieved that it was just a bad cold. After that, the landlord was so angry that he told the entire town what happened to him. The father-in-law was also fed up and kicked his wife out of the house, and even at their age, filed for a divorce. All the relatives who were joining in on the fun were also living under the watch of the landlord, so they got on their knees and apologized to my husband.
Please, let us apologize to Kelly. If not, we won't be able to live in this town anymore.
They begged my husband, but he also had enough.
No, there's no need to apologize anymore. I'm cutting off all ties with this family.
And then came straight home. Their reputations went straight down the drain, and they were ostracized from the entire community. My father-in-law, who didn't know any of this was going on, later came to our house.
I know that it's no excuse to say that I was unaware because of my work, but I'm truly so sorry for what my family put you through.
He gave me a heartfelt apology. I think my mother-in-law and those relatives got exactly what they deserved, but more than anything, I'm just relieved from the bottom of my heart that I'll never have to see them ever again.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.